Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rollin'. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From legendary Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. And now, here's this week's edition of Work Comp Matters. July 20th, 12 noon, straight up. Welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. My name is Steve Appell. I am joined by the madman across the water, John Scalia, and the Chief of Staff, Mike Zyma. We are brought to you by workcompcentral.com. If you want the number one location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, I have them. You should too. It's only $1 a day. Work Comp Matters is also brought to you by A1 Law, number one computer management system, 818-357-4120. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Weeks before the start of school, Californians are deeply split over whether campuses can safely reopen amid the ongoing coronavirus surge. Caught in a collective moment of uncertainty and anxiety, also reflected among teachers and educational leaders. Parents, as indicated in a new statewide poll, are grappling with the prospect of stressful, less effective learning at home, not to mention continued child care woes and fears that children exposed at school could bring COVID-19 home. I'm so afraid because I don't know what protections are going to be in place, said Yolanda Ford Swinton, who cares for an 8-year-old granddaughter. We spoke about this on the show yesterday, talking about whether or not children should or shouldn't be going back to school, whether or not they're going to wear masks. John correctly indicated that the danger, at least in school, is not for the kids, but it's actually for the teachers and the school administrators. And in addition to that, I said also that the kids bringing it home to mom, dad, uncle, aunt, grandma, grandfather, I really don't know. John, any new takes on the issue?
No new takes, but I did notice that the articles have now involved the teachers union. And one of the articles had a statement from the national head of the teachers union pointing out that, unless the teachers union is satisfied that the conditions are safe, they may not let their members go back into the classroom. I pointed that out yesterday, and sure enough, that's going to be an issue. And in all honesty, I don't think the United States has done anything to make anybody feel safe. And I would be surprised if the teachers union didn't tell their teachers to basically stay home.
Mike Zyma, you've got bread in the oven. Your daughter is about ready to pop. What's your take, man?
Well, if I allow myself to freak out about this, I can. So I have to be very careful. Would like to say that John did pick it in that the union, the teachers union, is probably going to be the deciding factor here. I heard the head of I guess it's a national teachers union, talk extensively on the Today Show yesterday morning. And it was a veiled threat, but I took it still as a threat. She was essentially saying that if everybody doesn't get their together, she wouldn't be surprised if there were sick outs, lots of teachers quitting, lots of teachers applying for leave of absences and such. So they're going to have to satisfy again, as John pointed out, they're going to have to satisfy the teachers union, and that's going to be a major undertaking. I think that the school district where I live and John used to live in Santa Clarita, they've usually been ahead of the curve on all kinds of issues. And we know a number of teachers there. We know a number of administrators. And I'd like to think that they've got it under control, but I'm sure it's going to take a lot of money. I mean, for example, if they just say, okay, we're going to have staggered classes, instead of the usual number of kids in a class, it's going to be half of them. And they're going to have twice as many classes. No matter what they do, it seems that it's going to cost a lot of dough. So we just have to see how it unfolds. As I said before, thank goodness our kids are out of school and ready to put another generation through. Of course, one that is born in a couple of months is not going to be going to school for a number of years. But I'm very concerned about all this stuff. Thanks.
And if I could add a postscript to that, Dr. Fauci today said on one of the news channels, he hasn't personally met with Trump for 2 months.
Well, thank you very much for that piece of news. In addition to the school season coming up, we also have another season coming up, the seemingly impossible task of gearing up for fire season in the midst of a surging pandemic fell with full force on California yesterday, prompting the Governor Gavin Newsom, to lay out the state's battle plan. He announced the hiring of 858 seasonal firefighters to replace prison crews whose ranks were cut in half after several of those inmates tested positive for the coronavirus, prompting a quarantine at 12 Northern California conservation camps. Newsom also said state emergency officials are working with the hotel industry to make rooms available for people displaced by fires so that fewer evacuees would be sent to shelters. Features will include socially distanced beds, temperature checks, mandatory face coverings, and individually boxed meals to prevent mixing between families. We've got to keep firefighters and evacuees safe, Newsom said. We've got to keep these environments COVID-free. I don't think it's possible to keep any environment COVID-free. What do you guys think?
Yeah, but you can certainly try, because if you don't try, it's worse.
Yeah, but I see Steve's point. I mean, I'm not sure it's possible. I agree with you. You got to try, but so the question is what percentage wise can you be successful? And the answer is we don't know.
I agree, John. We don't know a hell of a lot.
Yeah, today I was seeing some doctors talk about the fact that the autopsies have revealed all kinds of organ damage from COVID. The people who died didn't only sustain lung damage, but they sustained damage to other organs. So apparently the disease is a lot more invasive and a lot more pernicious than we originally thought. And it also has involved some cognitive deficits with some people. So apparently it's a really sneaky virus.
Well, it's a respiratory disease. And when we talk about the disease itself affecting other organs, I don't know if that's directly attributable to the disease or simply when you have a sustained lack of oxygen, that, of course, is going to affect your organs.
My impression from the discussion that I watched on TV today, I forget which channel, they interviewed doctors about it. My impression was that they did not think that it was a direct consequence of the disease in the sense that, as you said, that it deprived the body of oxygen. They think it's an independent side effect.
But a side effect, correct, John?
Yeah, well, apparently, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. Obviously, unless you see the autopsy report, you're not going to know if it was a side effect or the main effect. And that,
I
of
have
course,
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard that too, and I saw on the news last night they were releasing a guy who had been on a ventilator for a number of months. He was in a wheelchair, but his upper extremities exhibited neurologic damage. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there's an article in the section today about a guy who was in the hospital for a couple of months, and he talks about the fact that, people ask him, "Are you recovered?" And he said no, and he talked about all the things that he still can't do and that he's struggling to learn or redo. So yeah, apparently the effects are, well, we really don't know what the effects are. And the other thing is, autopsies, of course, are sort of rushed. I mean, I did depose a deputy county coroner once, and it wasn't an autopsy. It was they slit open the corpse and took a quick look inside, literally. And I was not impressed with how autopsies are done at the coroner's office, let me tell you.
Well, there's been a lot of information in the news about the accuracy of autopsies and having second autopsies done, and the doctors disagreeing on the cause of death. My name's Steve Appell. You're dialed into Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by theworkcompcentral.com. If you want the number one location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out the workcompcentral.com. Work Comp Matters is also brought to you by A1 Law, number one computer management system, 818-357-4120. Mike, I'm hoping you have a news story for us ready to go.
Stanford on Wednesday announced that it will eliminate 11 varsity sports at the conclusion of the 2020-2021 academic season. In a statement, the university said the athletic program had been under review for some time, and while the coronavirus pandemic played a role in the decision, ultimately it was the cost of supporting so many programs that led to the move. The sports that will be eliminated are men and women's fencing, field hockey, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, co-ed and women's sailing, squash, synchronized swimming, men's volleyball, and wrestling. Athletic Director Bernard Muir also addressed the elephant in the room. Quote, "The other unknown that we continue to try to get our arms around is whether we will have football," end quote. And, the Ivy League this week, and they're Division I. The Ivy League announced.
No, actually, they're not. They're right below Division I.
Well, they're Division I in some sports. They're Division I in hoops.
Yes, that's
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that just it? That's only hoops. They're Division I.
Well, I think fencing and some of the other, but certainly not in football and not in baseball. They're right below Division I in those.
I see. Well, they announced that they canceled the entire all sports for the next year.
All right, and Mike, I don't know if you're wearing headphones, but why don't you disconnect them, and a friendly mute reminder if you are. I've got the next story, and then I know John wants to talk about something. But, John, this one's right up your alley. At the behest of the United States government, German authorities have seized a computer server that hosted a huge cache of files from scores of United States federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies obtained in a Houston data breach last month. This is from the Insurance Journal, hot off the press today, guys. The server was being used by WikiLeaks-like data transparency collective called Distributed Denial of Secrets to share documents, many tagged for official use only, that shed light on United States police practices. The data dating back to 1996 includes emails, audio, and video files, and police and FBI intelligence reports. Do Secrets founder Emma Best said the data dubbed Blue Leaks comes from more than 200 agencies. It has been stripped of references to sexual assault cases and references to children, but names, phone numbers, and emails of police officers were not redacted, and Best who uses they, their pronouns. John, I know I didn't discuss this with you before the show, but have you heard anything about that out there in Munich, Germany?
No, this is the first I've heard of it. Sounds
yeah, if you want, go ahead and
interesting.
access the Insurance Journal, and it is right there, babe. I suspect you'll put 5 minutes into it maybe over the weekend and get back to us with an update, hopefully.
Will do.
But he's the madman across the water, and he was a practicing attorney for 35 years here in California workers' compensation, practicing the social life. But now he's out in Munich, Germany, living the socialist life. With his couple of minutes of fame on Work Comp Matters, Mr. John Scalia.
Hi, this is John here, regular madman across the water. Yesterday, the Supreme Court, I think it was yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court came out with an interesting ruling on the tribal rights to Oklahoma. Let me explain to you what was involved in the case. First of all, it was a very unsympathetic case because the plaintiff in the case was admittedly guilty of the crime in which he sodomized and killed a 4-year-old girl. There's no dispute. So obviously, there's no sympathy there. The guy's a piece of scum, and whatever he got was coming to him. So the whole question was not whether or not he was guilty. That was conceded for the purposes of the argument. The only question was he was convicted in a state court in Oklahoma. And so the only question was, well, should he have been tried in a tribal court, or should he have been tried under one of the agreements with the feds in a federal court between the feds and the Indians? Now, a lot of people will say, well, why are they doing this? I mean, the guy's been in jail for 20 years, and he's obviously guilty of the crime. Who cares? Lock him up and throw away the key. And I got to admit, that's a pretty common sense argument. The problem is it's one of jurisdiction. And I have a very personal interest in this. When I was in law school, I worked in Bishop, California, with California Indian Legal Services. One of the things in Bishop, we had a very good district attorney. His nickname was Buck, and his dad was a judge. And I think Buck eventually became a judge, maybe even a Court of Appeal judge. Really, really nice guy, really bright guy. But I was representing the Indians. I was representing the tribe, and Buck knew that the Indians probably weren't under his jurisdiction. Okay, it was an interesting problem. Yeah, because a part of the problem that was interesting was the only law enforcement was there were the local DAs, the local police. In other words, the people under Buck's control. So what it ended up being when I was there, I don't know if it continued, but I would have weekly or biweekly meetings with Buck, and basically I represented the tribal interests, and we would negotiate, or we would come to an agreement on how things would work, so that there was never any problem, and so there was never any kerfuffle about who was doing what to whom. But the point is, he recognized that fact even back then. We're talking about 1971. So when the Supreme Court came down and said, look, this is an Indian land according to treaty, federal government treaty, so therefore you can't try him in a state court. And if you think this is weird, I would refer you to the fact that there's now casinos on Indian land. And those casinos exist for the same reason that this decision existed. The Indians said, this is our land. We're not bound by the white man's laws on gambling. If we want to have a casino, you can't stop us. And that goes back to a case in the 60s, which involved actually originally hunting in Washington state. So I believe that the Supreme Court got it right. Now, they're not giving the land to the Indians. Tulsa, Oklahoma is not going to become one big reservation under the jurisdiction of the tribes. But what they're saying is this land was ceded by the government to the Indians, and therefore any criminal activity either has to be tried in tribal courts, which they have, or under an agreement with the federal government and the tribe, which we have. So I think they got it right. I understand why people are upset, especially who don't want to go into the intricacies of the decision. But it was, in fact, the right decision.
And thank you very much for that. And now closer to home, specifically my office, we'll go back to Mike Zima with hopefully another fascinating news story.
Well, if I could ask John a question. John, what happened to the perpetrator in that Oklahoma case? Is he going to get tried again under Native American law?
Yeah, they'll either try him in a tribal court or he will be tried under one of the agreements between the feds and the Indians. Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
I see. Well, after almost 6 months at sea fighting a deadly coronavirus outbreak, a controversial change in command, and international attention, the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier returned to its home port in San Diego on yesterday. The return comes a week after a second sailor died aboard the nuclear-powered warship. The Roosevelt made international headlines when former Captain Brett Crozier sent out a letter asking for an immediate evacuation of the ship as COVID-19 spread. The Navy subsequently removed him from command. Criticism of acting Navy Secretary Thomas Maudsley's visit to and speech aboard the ship condemning Crozier's actions led to Maudsley's resignation. And folks, I think they had been quarantined at Guam for weeks and weeks, but
Yes.
They're home now in San Diego.
And they reinstated him and then they unreinstated him.
Did he ever officially get reinstated?
I think he did, but then they took it away. I mean, his rank was restored or whatever. I don't know if he actually. Yeah.
I think they restored his rank, and I think somewhere behind closed doors, I think he told them to go shove it.
Well, if he's still in the Navy, and if there's a change of guard in the White House, I suspect he will become an admiral.
He's certainly somebody that should.
The Actors Union, representing 750 Walt Disney World performers, has filed a grievance against the Orlando, Florida-based theme park, alleging retaliation against its members over the union's demand that they be tested for the coronavirus. Walt Disney Company plans to reopen Disney World on Saturday with attendance limits, social distancing rules, and new health and safety protocols. Florida has seen a spike in coronavirus cases in recent weeks. In June, Florida infections rose by 168%, or over 95,000 new cases. I remember a month or two ago where Florida was saying, we're doing it differently than everybody else. We've got everything all spaced out. And I think right now, New Jersey and New York notwithstanding, or maybe even including New Jersey and New York, the state of Florida is suffering the most if you look at the numbers of any state in the union.
Florida has a right-wing nutbag for governor.
Well, Florida is an absolute mess. And I agree with John that, I don't know, the guy's a Republican. I mean, and look at the problem that Texas is having too. That governor's a Republican. So I don't know whether there's a pattern there or not.
Don, do you have a fresh news story for us? And I think I'm going to close the show.
I do. San Francisco. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle. And what it says is, parties, beer, and coronavirus. Surge in cases among young people threatens colleges' reopening plans. A recent outbreak of coronavirus cases at UC Berkeley, so we're not talking about your local JC folks, tied to summer fraternity parties, has highlighted a worrisome trend for colleges and universities. Young people are driving the virus' recent rampage across the country. The surge carries ominous implications for schools, including UC Berkeley and Stanford, planning to welcome students back to campus in August and September. That was already a daunting task, and now it's complicated by this spike, which experts traced in part to many young people gathering indoors and not wearing face masks or socially distancing. I would say it's probably hard to kiss when you're wearing a face mask. Anyway, their behavior, congregating, partying, defying authority, qualifies as perfectly appropriate for people their age in normal times, but it also underscores the challenge for college and public health officials in persuading them to follow guidelines to help control the virus. Dr. George Lemp, really that's his name, L-E-M-P, a retired University of California epidemiologist, now living in Sonoma County, he's drinking good wine, has spent much of the past 4 months crunching numbers, trying to gain insight into the demographics of the pandemic. In the 2 weeks ending June 27, he saw count skyrocket 76% among people age 18 to 34 in California compared with the prior 2 weeks. Okay, the article goes on. I'm going to tell you something now, a story, and that is, yes, this is appropriate behavior for young people. A couple of my friends back when I was in college and there was no terrorism and there was no security at airports, I had a couple of friends who actually would hop the fence at San Francisco International Airport, run onto the runway and lie down on the runway to see how close they could get to a jet taking off. Okay? That's called high-risk behavior. It's called being young. Oh, yeah. The two guys who did that, one is now a retired emergency room physician who went to UC San Francisco Med School, and the other is the most prominent civil litigator in the world and in America. So, yeah, that's typical behavior for young people, and, it's a problem when you tell young people you can't party, you can't socialize, and you can't have what young people consider to be fun. It ain't going to work.
John, I have to respectfully disagree. Hopping a fence and running to see how close you can get to a jet taking off is just plain stupid. Okay, I don't.
They not only ran; they laid down on the runway.
I don't think that is the regular practices of young people. I would call that an outlier. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mike. Any burning desires?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us for another exciting edition of Work Comp Matters, July 10th, 2020. Much thanks to Scott Walton of Uncle Studios, Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma, Madman Across the Water, John Scalia, and all the good people back at WorkCompcentral. My name is Steve Appell. Have a great, safe weekend, and we'll see you again Monday at noon for another edition of Work Comp Matters.